is it a safer bet to buy into a franchise versus starting your own business when it comes to the financial risk?
I believe so. I believe so. Just by looking at the odds, I mean, all other things equal, if you're starting something on your own versus buying into a system, the odds of success are higher than if you buy into a franchise typically. Now, the
Mhm.
caveat is it has to be the right business, right? So, and if you are Elon Musk and you're amazing at starting processes and scaling businesses, maybe you should start your own thing, right? But if you're just kind of new to this whole entrepreneurial game, you've been in the corporate world for a while, then I would seriously look at this as, I think of it as having entrepreneurship with training wheels.
Welcome, fellow entrepreneurs and goal getters, to Entrepreneurial Elevation, Unleashing Greatness Within, with myself, your host, Kelly Beveridge, and my guest today, Adam Goldman. And I'm excited to have him on today. He is a franchise coach and consultant. He helps others achieve their dreams through franchise business ownership. He's founded 3 companies himself, and I just want to mention them so that you can see his extensive background: an IT company in Poland, real estate investment company in Texas, recently a Vanguard cleaning area developer concept out of Houston, which was turned into a multi-million-dollar enterprise and over 30 franchises, which he then in turn sold. And now, Adam, you've written a book called The Franchise Lifestyle, and you're a recruiter where you provide free service to connect franchisees to franchisors. So I was just telling you before you hopped on that I'm excited to learn from you today, because we're going to talk about, my audience mostly is entrepreneurs and business minded people. We're going to talk about why owning a franchise could be a potential solution as an entrepreneur. And I think you're the guy to talk to about this. So welcome.
So happy to be on.
Yes. Welcome, welcome. Beginning of a new year. And so I'm curious, what I want to ask to start, Adam, is what inspired you to focus on connecting franchisees to franchisors through your journey in entrepreneurship? Like, how did you end up here doing this?
So I kind of stumbled into franchising, right? Just like many people in the franchise world, it was
Mm.
2009. I was investing in real estate right after the 2008 recession and found that my deals were kind of drying up. And so just talked to a franchise coach, was introduced to a few different brands and really resonated with a Vanguard cleaning concept for Houston. I realized kind of by trial and error that when it came to scaling businesses and when it came to systems, that wasn't my strength to actually create the systems from scratch. And so being a entrepreneur through franchising, right? That was actually a really good path for me as someone that can execute, but not necessarily create these systems myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, okay, so I'm curious, right? So you adopted this passion, you saw this as a powerful business model, right, for yourself to get involved with, and now you're supporting other people. So why would you recommend it for entrepreneurs who are starting a business to go the franchise route versus start their own business from scratch?
So look, not everyone is in this right situation, right? Some people are great at starting businesses from scratch. But Gerber, in his book called The E-Myth, talks about how when people start a business on their own, they're wearing many different hats, especially if there isn't a system in place. And look, I'm all about the system. I just listened to a podcast called about someone that wrote a book called Atomic Habits. And what he says is like, look, you can reach the top of the mountain once, but if you have a great system, you can continuously reach the top of the mountain. So in the right sort of business with with some sort of a franchise system that works for the right person, then you can actually scale a business and you're able to do things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do, right? So things such as start a business from scratch. Whereas if you're starting on your own, it's kind of a wild card. You might have that ability to create processes, but it's really hard to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, no, you know what? That's so true. Systems is so important. And so I'm curious, like, how would somebody know that they would be like, is there certain qualities or characteristics you would say for somebody to become a franchisor? So is if somebody's out there looking to be an entrepreneur and start a business, what would make somebody a good fit?
So by the way, just terminology. It's franchisors, the people that are providing the franchise business, like McDonald's or Burger King or Orange Theory Fitness. And it's franchisees that buy into the system, right? So the people that make good franchisees, let's talk about what they aren't. They really are. Well, let's talk about what they are. They're people that have business backgrounds, right? I connect investors with brands that are in 75 different industries. But what they really aren't is they aren't people that have an issue with following a model or system. Some people are like, hey, I need to do this my own way. I'm going to open a McDonald's. I don't really believe in selling hamburgers. I want to sell kebabs instead. Or in addition, I don't want to have golden arches. I want to have some other shape for the front of my McDonald's. You're probably not a fit for franchising, especially if you don't want to pay royalty fees and franchise fees. But if you have some sort of corporate experience or drive and you're willing to learn, that's really a good place to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, right? Because, yeah, if you're not somebody who likes to follow the rules or you want to beat at the tune of your own drum, owning a franchise may not be the best fit for you because that's why it works because you're given a proven system, right? And so oh, go ahead. You were going to share something.
So what I would say is this too, that it's not so onerous, right? It's not like you have to, it's not like you're an employee and this is a job. You need to do this at a certain time. Now look, different franchise brands are more strict than others, right? If you're a Chick-fil-A franchisee, you need to open at a certain time. You can't open on Sundays, right? But just depending on the franchise brand, it depends on how strict they are. My franchise brand that I bought into, we didn't have a shared marketing budget. Many franchise brands, for instance, have a shared marketing budget. When you're watching a sports event and you see some sort of advertisement in the outfield or at midfield for a soccer game, that might be a shared marketing budget that you buy into.
Okay, interesting. So what would you say, like, where are good industries to look into? Because I'm just sitting here thinking of certain franchises. And if I was a rookie at this, right, but I had my business background, where would be a good place to start looking? Like, you've been involved for quite some time. Like, is the restaurant side more lucrative? Is there other industries that might be better to take a poke around in? Like, where would you suggest are some of the top franchise, industries that are being successful right now?
So what I would say is this, that I'm less industry focused. I have 75 different brands or 75 industries that are represented in my inventory of pre-screened brands. I'm more focused on characteristics of different businesses. But what I would
Mhm.
say is each person's different. Um, my system works best for finding the right fit when people have an open mind. So when we talk about different industries that make sense for people, it's ones that frankly aren't necessarily glamorous, right? If you think about things that, in my humble opinion, things that other people don't want to do, like cleaning toilets, right? Or senior care, that's really an interesting place to be, or porta potties, right? Or cleaning up dog poop, right? I mean, there's things that are need to have, not nice to have, or water restoration. And I really like those businesses that are out of favor where margins are potentially higher than other places.
That's interesting. So maybe speak to that. Like, if I was going to come in to look at a specific franchise, what do I want to be paying attention to decide if it is something that could turn out to be lucrative?
So look, I think that 97% of all franchise businesses, right? They kind of have similar characteristic, but that might be the extra 3%, right? So what I mean is I might give you three different brands, but you might have the passion towards children, right? And because of that passion, you're kind of gravitating towards a swim school, right? That might be the extra 3%. Everyone's different. It's a personalized service that I offer to people, but it's really kind of a matching like eHarmony or Match.com. And the goal of my process and my service, it's a free service, by the way. If I make a match to the franchise brand that pays me a commission, not you, it's really to kind of make that perfect match and to figure out what these things that are most important to you are.
Okay. So what are some questions you would ask a potential franchisee so that you can start to figure out where you would match them?
I think for me, I'm looking for why, right? That's one of the most important questions, right? Like, I mean, because most successful franchise candidates are ones that really have an overriding reason for doing this, right? And then if I go deeper from a characteristic point of view, we're looking at characteristics from, are you going to be selling all day long? How many employees do you want? Do you prefer blue collar or white collar? Is this a weekend investment? What are your resources? Is this the kind of thing you can afford? I have brands that are very expensive, right? That are brick and mortar retail with a big build out. Is this in your budget, or would you prefer something that's still great, but it's more scalable on the lower end?
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. And I was actually going to ask you about that, right? So the financial consideration. So would you say it's safer? Is it a safer bet to buy into a franchise versus starting your own business when it comes to the financial risk?
I believe so. I believe so. Just by looking at the odds, I mean, all other things equal, if you're starting something on your own versus buying into a system, the odds of success are higher than if you buy into a franchise typically. Now, the
Mhm.
caveat is it has to be the right business, right? So, and if you're Elon Musk and you're amazing at starting processes and scaling businesses, maybe you should start your own thing, right? But if you're just kind of new to this whole entrepreneurial game, you've been in the corporate world for a while, then I would seriously look at this as I think of it as having entrepreneurship with training wheels.
Yeah, I love that. Do you find most people, if this is their first endeavor, right, into entrepreneurship, do you find, like you just talked about that, using it almost like a training ground because you get the system and then you get to, for lack of better words, practice, right, running this business. Do most people stick with the first store that they start to operate, or do they expand, or do they then grow it and sell it? Like, what is the scale factors or options that people look for?
The way that people typically expand is they expand by territory, right? So if you buy into a fitness concept, the way you expand is or a restaurant, you might open another branch. If you invest in a mosquito spraying company or a home healthcare service, the way you expand is maybe you have more territory, right? So typically they expand within the system that they bought into.
Okay, that makes sense. What is an average startup? Like when we're talking about, if we're just talking about straight up money, like what is somebody looking at to get involved, or is it kind of all over the map?
It is all over the map, but let's kind of divide this into brick and mortar and non brick and mortar. So if we look at brick and mortar, it's a situation where it might be as high as over $1 million if you're buying into McDonald's. On the lower end, if you're investing in kind of a boutique fitness with a small footprint, that might be about $250,000 all in. There is financing available. If you're looking at things that are non brick and mortar service businesses like home health care, right? That could start about $125,000 all in. So there's a huge range, anywhere from 125K and up. And people typically are using different funding sources. Sometimes they're able to use their 401K to actually fund their business.
Okay. So, you're talking about all these different opportunities that I've never even heard of before, which is kind of interesting. So, where do we find, like, what resources are available? Or, like, if we obviously we can come to someone like yourself and ask, right? Like, what's out there. But where else can we see if we're looking into owning a franchise? What's available? Because you've just mentioned some I would never have even thought of that could be good opportunities.
I really like for people that are just, I think of it as being franchising 101, right?
Mhm.
Is to kind of go to Entrepreneur Magazine's Franchise 500. And I'm not saying this because, wow, this is number one on the Franchise 500. I should invest in this one, but just to kind of get a sense for what kind of businesses are franchised outside of restaurants.
Okay, that's cool. And what about, you mentioned different funding. So let's say somebody's wanting to get started. Some people are going to have the cash, right, to invest. Some are going to need support. You're in the States, so it might look a little bit different than Canada. But what are some options so that people could get started if they don't have the full amount to invest?
So, what I say to people that don't have enough money, typically there are different funding sources, right? But a great place to kind of look is through either friends or family to have them be financial partners to invest.
Mm.
Now, the government does give financing options sometimes as well. In the United States, we call it an SBA loan. These are recourse loans, meaning that if the business doesn't work out for whatever reason, you're still on the hook for them, but that is potentially an option as well. I know in Canada, they have something similar as well.
Yeah.
There also are ways to borrow against a stock portfolio and other ways to kind of, there are different creative financing. Sometimes, every once in a while, different franchise brands offer in house financing for a portion of their franchisees.
Yeah, and I know, it's really you can get resourceful at the end of the day, and you and I were chatting about too, the cool thing about, the franchise option, if you're somebody who wants to move to the States, you can follow something called the E2 visa with different treaty companies. And so maybe what is that? Speak to that and how could that be a benefit to people wanting to live in the States who
I'm
currently
so,
aren't?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think this is kind of one of these hidden gems of the United States, of immigration to the United States. Many people come to countries like Canada, and it's a great country, right? And but one of the reasons why they come is they want to enter the United States eventually, right? And so they know of different ways to enter, but one thing they don't know about is something called an E2 visa, which is something where you can invest in a service company that is not very expensive relatively to get into, and you're able to get entrance into the United States for yourself and the members of your family by investing in a franchise business. So you get the best of both worlds. You can start a potentially successful business and enter the United States and make a difference for your family. Maybe you want your kids to go to a great school or something like that. And Canada is one of these E2 treaty countries among about 120 other countries that allow you to do this path in order to come to the United States.
That's so awesome. Do you have any personal examples of seeing or helping somebody do that?
I do. I do. I mean, look, that's actually a big part of my practice. Every year, my investors buy about 100 territories, right? In about 20 to 30 buying groups. And last year, I found that it was about 25% of my business. And of those, many of them came from Canada. And my experience has been that these businesses are not very, I mean, when you think about immigrating to the United States through a business, the stereotype is, oh my gosh, I need to buy a McDonald's or I need to make these multi-million dollar investments. And these were relatively inexpensive businesses that were service businesses that were on the kind of the lower end of the spectrum. I even had someone decide to invest in a home cleaning company and was able to obtain his E2 visa through that method.
That's so cool. Is there any minimum factors? Like, do you have to invest a certain amount that would be a minimum for to qualify?
So great question. I think it's quite broad about it's got to be substantial. The whole idea behind E2 is that you need to be creating US jobs. So the franchise is a great option to kind of come to a consular and say, hey, look, this is this system. They have X amount of units already open. This is their background and their playbook. I'm going to go ahead and hire 4 people for this. And I've never had one of these denied from a consular point of view.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know a lot of people from different countries that might intrigue, right? So I'm really curious about that. So that's actually good to know. Just another solution, right, for people and families to be living where they want to live, which is pretty great.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm curious. I wanna play a little bit of devil's advocate, not in a bad way,
Please.
because I love the idea of a franchise. I used to work for a company that had, I think, 130 different stores, and I was the area manager, so I spent a lot of time with the franchisee, and I saw some amazing success stories, yet I also saw the opposite. And so I'm just curious because what do you think based on your opinion, being in the industry for quite some time, would allow someone to be successful versus not? Like for example, I saw a lot of people where they put their blood, sweat, and tears into their store. It was their first venture, and they ended up losing a lot of money because the location that they chose wasn't great. They just weren't maybe great at budgeting and managing things. They were taking out extra loans, and they ended up having to sell and making no money and being in debt. Right. So it ended up being a pretty big learning experience for them in the land of business. And so, what would you say is some differentiating factors so that you can be a success story and not be somebody who comes out losing your shirt with this venture?
So, Kelly, that's an amazing question. And what I would say is 2 things, right? The most important thing, number one, is you got to pick the right brand. So, I
Hmm.
would argue that the people that's inside of your system that didn't work out, that many of them, and there are some exceptions, they probably shouldn't have been franchisees to begin with, right? So maybe it was a situation where they didn't have the makeup. Maybe they went through a life event, right? Maybe they had some sort of illness in their family, personal challenges, right? So you got to pick the right one. And by working with someone like me, you have the ability to make that right pick as opposed to just kind of throwing a dart and just kind of seeing a lemonade stand and say, wow, I should invest in these, but it's probably not the right fit for you, right? But let's say that you get into that right brand. Let's talk about the second thing, right? You get the second brand, you get into the right brand. And look, not everything works out. You can buy the most amazing fitness brand, but it's 2020. And then you're in California and every single fitness company's closed because of COVID and you're undercapitalized. I don't care how amazing you are, you're not in a good place, right? But if I really believe when we talk about different computer errors, right? We talk about Y2K. I'm aging myself here. What happened 25 years ago? But look, there's a difference between user error and machine malfunction, right? The vast majority of businesses that I've seen, even when we make this amazing fit, it's related to user malfunction. And look, one of my favorite people and biggest mentors told me that the difference between excellence and failure is just maybe a couple percentage. If you're talking about something at the end of the day, making a couple more phone calls, making that one relationship inside of the system, I think about it as being every franchisee as being a silver bullet, right? And so the question that I ask my candidates who sometimes aren't doing so great or could do better is, have they really done everything, right? What I mean by that is, have you made friends at the head office? Have you gone ahead and have you made relationships inside of the system with top performers? When I was a Vanguard Cleaning franchisee, my staff trained with the Vanguard Cleaning franchisee in Minneapolis. She didn't have to train us, but she decided, because of our relationship, she mentored my staff members. So the silver bullet, can you do that 1% more to kind of make the difference between average performance and being an excellent performer?
Interesting. And so, okay, so really just kind of taking a look, like going back to the fit, right? So is the franchisee model even a fit for you? Did you choose the right brand? And what are you doing to make sure that, what did you call it? User malfunction.
So look, the analogy is for when you're talking about IT, it's user error versus machine malfunction, right?
Mm,
Machine malfunction is when it's a bad franchise, right? Or I mean, let's even put, even if it's COVID, that's not user error, that's machine malfunction, right? That's just something that just happens, a black swan event. User error is when you're a white collar person and you probably shouldn't have been in blue collar to begin with, but just kind of what things you can actually, or within your power on a day-to-day basis, that you can really turn this thing around.
okay. Okay. So this makes me think of another question when you talk about user error. And because I also found that when you purchase a franchise, what is your take on this? Because I found most people who purchased a franchise ended up buying themselves a job. Like they had to be there. They were the ones opening, the ones closing. And in their mind, it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, where they could have leverage and this business that they could run, but more from afar versus being in the trenches in it. So I'm just curious when it comes to that, do you feel, and is that most of the franchise models, that you have to be there being the one in operations?
So to get some clarification, could you give me a little bit more info about the industry that you have experience in?
Yeah, so it was in the food industry and restaurant industry. So they had, yeah, exactly, smoothie companies, and it was like it was hands-on, like busy breakfast, lunch, that kind of thing, fast food, healthy smoothies and food.
So look, if you're coming to me and saying, "Hey Adam, I think that many restaurants are really very hands-on and labor intensive for an owner," and I would agree with you, right?
Mm,
I mean, I don't see many hands-off restaurant owners. If an air conditioning is not working at 2 o'clock in the morning, you've got to be on call, even if you have managers, right? It's kind of like one firefight after another. But I have 75 industries, right? That gives me 74 other industries outside of restaurants. And I'm not saying every industry could be potentially hands off, but if you have a skill set that can allow you to manage efficiently people, right? And you're managing managers and you're the right sort of business, a low employee headcount. I'll give you an example, like a salon suite that has no employees at all. Once you have this thing up and running where you have people inside, you're not really as hands-on as you might be at a Chick-fil-A restaurant as a Chick-fil-A franchisee. So it just depends on your skill set and the actual fit for the franchise brand.
yeah, that's a good point. That's funny how you mentioned restaurants. It's so true, right? It is a very different beast. And so I'm curious, why do most people sell in the first place? Because kind of playing the devil's advocate again, I would say I would assume most people would sell because they're not creating the revenue they want versus selling when they're going out on top? I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of both. But why do most people choose to sell once they're involved?
Look, some people sell because it's not working out, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's a reality, right? Meaning it's just not, that's a distress sale. I can speak for myself. I sold because I thought it was a great situation to be starting a business from scratch. It wasn't as much fun for me 8 years in. It was more like an aircraft carrier where I'm kind of, okay, this was really great to kind of build this thing up. But now that I've built this thing up, whenever I get a new customer, that's wonderful. But because just of inertia, I have so many people in my system and so many different accounts that I'm kind of racing every month to kind of catch up when it comes to attrition and everything else. So a lot more fun to build it from scratch than to actually maintain it 8.5 years in, and got this deal, this offer that I had to accept. That was a great offer to sell it. So the successful franchisees, Orange Theory franchisees that are successful, just like any business that's successful, had private equity people come in and buy up different cities from a position of success or strength. That's an amazing situation to be in. And just like any business, if you have cash flow, then you have potentially a successful exit.
Yeah, that's cool. What would you say would be the top, like, if you, I mean, you've mentioned a bunch, but if we were just going to say like top three benefits, top three challenges, what would be the top three benefits of owning a franchise and the top three challenges?
That is such a great question. So look, number one, top three benefits. Number one is the system, right? Meaning having a playbook. What I mean by this system is I'm talking about things such as maybe even you have a guild where you're getting from other people inside of your home market, you're getting pricing, you're having accounting. It's just allowing you to scale the business, having a network of other people as well that are inside the system, right? So that's that. Let's just kind of talk about the system piece. Number two, let's say brand, right? Because if you have a great brand, it doesn't happen all the time, but the fact that people know about Ace Hardware, right? That allows them to brand still matters these days, right? People buy on brand, and maybe that's a helpful thing for you to have this brand. The second piece. And I think the third piece, I would say, top three, would be just, let's say, like the fact that I think it is system related, but just kind of, it's about the mistakes that you wouldn't have made before, right?
Mhm.
So, because the successful franchisees that I talk to, they say, oh my gosh, Adam, this is all the money that I've saved because I would have done something differently if I did this on my own.
Yeah, I love that's actually huge, right? Because you have, once again, like a proven system that works and you follow the system. So you don't end up spending extra money trying different things that then don't work. Love that. The mistakes that you don't make, right? There's a big savings in that as a fellow entrepreneur, right? For sure. Can you, we tell you like, and you shared, I love that. The system, the brand, the mistakes you don't make. Can you explain a little bit more about the system? Because we've touched on it, but for somebody who's listening and they haven't really learned much about a franchise and what that means, like, can you share in more detail? Like, when you're buying a franchise, like, what are you actually buying? Because that I think is, you're basically buying this phenomenal business system that you just get to plug into. But what is the system?
So it depends on the franchise brand, right?
Mhm.
I can speak best to office cleaning because that's what I owned for 8.5 years, right? So when I signed the dotted line and bought a system, they're like, okay, this is where you should be putting your office cleaning location. It wasn't a brick and mortar retail. It was more kind of like in a flex space where my franchisees could come and get trained and learn about the opportunity. This is the accounting software that you're using. These are the amount of people that you should hire. This is how you bid, and you actually go ahead and find accounts and go ahead and how much you should bid per square foot from our experience when you're bidding on that. Just everything related to the business itself, how you hire, marketing. Do you do it digitally or do you have telemarketing? That the system also is having brothers and sisters in arms that are not competitors that are in markets like yours that you can kind of
Mhm.
lean on and rely upon to find out about how things are going in the business.
I love that. Marketing, training, software, hiring, accounting, branding, like you really do get everything. And what you just talked about was really important at the end. you have a like a community of comrades almost, right? That you can go to and really find out what's working and what can improve and support each other when it comes to like the other people who are in the similar franchise as you.
And Kelly, you're actually bringing up something very important, right? Where I'm talking about culture. People
Mhm.
tend to underestimate how important culture is in their franchise system. So when I'm asking my candidates to go ahead and do due diligence, the most important piece of that is actually to go to the system and to actually talk to existing franchisees and see what they say, because you really find out so much by talking to them. But even more importantly, you get to kind of find out, wait a second here, do I fit into this culture or not?
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. And so what would be some due diligence things? Let's say I was like, I'm gonna get a franchise. I want to be a franchisee. I'm gonna start doing some research. What would be some tips you would give me to focus on for due diligence of what to look for?
Most important is talking to these existing franchisees, right?
Mhm.
And to my candidates, I give them a list of questions to ask. And you ask questions to these people that really don't care, frankly, if you're going to buy or not, that are not trying to sell you anything. Let's say that you're in Atlanta. You should probably talk to someone in a like market, maybe Dallas, right? Or Charlotte. And you ask them questions like, hey, how much money are you making? Or if you could redo this at the beginning, what would you do differently? How good has your support been from the head office? Just all these questions that you can ask people is just really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely do your due diligence. I like that. Go right to the source, right? Have a conversation with them. They don't gain or lose anything by telling you
No.
the truth, by telling you the truth. So you're going to get the real story.
And look, Kelly, just to kind of be real about this, it's like anything in life has overperformers, average performers, and underperformers. The goal is to find people like you in markets like yours, right? That are killing it, right? And you want to talk to these people and say, wait a second here, this person's doing it. They've made X amount of money these past couple years. I can do this as well. I know I can do this.
Yeah, I love that advice. I always say, like, no matter what it is that you want to do in life, go and find someone who's doing it and doing it well and model them and talk to them and learn from them and get mentored by them. That's the same as what you're saying here, true, right? Rings true here too. What would you say, you've like, once again, you're helping a lot of different people. Maybe share a few stories, share a few success stories for those people who are intrigued and curious and like wondering if, purchasing a franchise is for them. What are a few of your success stories, if you don't mind sharing, so that we can
Sh-
hear some of the great things?
Sure. So look, when I look back at my placements that are happiest, right?
Mm,
One that really resonates with me is it's a husband and wife, and they are from India originally. He's always wanted to start his own business, right? But kind of got swept up into corporate America. And in India, he kind of wanted this business and to start something. And he's really successful in his life in corporate America, Fortune 500 IT ahead, right? CTO, Chief Technology Officer, CIO, Chief Information Officer. And he saw this amazing salon suite concept where he could run it with his wife. And he's like, wait a second here. I can keep my day job. My wife has her own gig, but we can kind of start this from scratch. And they built it up. They were actually the franchisees of the year last year for their
mm,
concept. They actually bought real estate underneath for one of their 3 locations. It's the kind of thing too, where once you kind of build it up and you have 90% plus occupancy for salon professionals, whether or not it's tattoo removal people or hairstylists. One of the things about the salon industry is there's a misconception that people in that industry don't make a lot of money. If you're a good person in the beauty industry, you make 6 figures plus. And they don't really have the opportunity to find a really good location, and you're really fulfilling a need to
mhm.
have space in a good location. So that's been a great experience for both of them. I'm really proud of them as franchisees. Another one that comes to mind, which is a different industry, is I have someone again that's the top performer in his system. And what he does is he's filling another niche. His background was water polo at Princeton. And his situation was that with water polo, he was in corporate America, wasn't really a great fit. And he's like, wait a second here. This is an amazing idea, Adam. He found a need to have as well, but it was in swim instruction. And Kelly, one of the things about swim instruction is that there's kind of like this one of the barriers is you don't really want to create a pool, right? Because that's expensive. If you look at all the most successful companies on Wall Street, they're ones that are asset light. NVIDIA is so successful because they're not creating these plants like Intel. They're doing the design of the chip. And this company is not creating the actual swim location or swim pools. They're actually taking existing stock of lapped pools or lanes at fitness studios and repurposing them.
Hmm.
And so what he's found is that there's insatiable demand for swim instruction, and he's actually finding the right swim instructors for that. So he's able to scale that into like 6 to 10 locations and doing a great, great job with his franchise. Those are two that really come to mind.
So cool. There's so many different ways to make money and start business and have business. Hey, like it really is just getting creative. And like you said, what's the need to have and what are you passionate about and just finding the right fit. What would you say? So just, starting to wrap up soon, but what else would you like to share, right? Around when it comes around our topic about why like owning a franchise could be a great solution for an entrepreneur. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I think people are really, I think they're surprised when they see how inexpensive relatively these things are. They think, oh my gosh, you need to spend millions of dollars. This could be as little as $125,000 or $150,000 all in for a service company.
So it's a great place to start. It's actually doable and you can scale and you can make a great business from being a part of a franchise and being a franchisee. That's awesome. So Adam, where can people find you? Maybe tell us a little bit more about your business and if people were curious to get involved and or they have a franchise and want to sell, how do they find you?
Best place is to go ahead and I have free 15-minute conversations, right? And I promise to tell you if I don't think you're a great fit, it's franchiseadam.com. Alternatively, you can go to franchisecoach.net and schedule a 15-minute chat with me, and we can kind of talk about it. I have franchise opportunities in the United States and in Canada as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, cool. That's really good to know. And like I said, I have international listeners on here too, right? So knowing about the E2 visa is super amazing as well with those different treaty countries. And so, okay, so we will put your information in the show notes so that people can find you. And so just go into the show notes, everybody, if you're listening and you want to reach out to Adam. And so, Adam, I have a few last questions. What would you say now? I mean, you've had quite an extensive business background. What would you say now would be your version of success?
I think it's about lifestyle for me, as opposed to, look, being successful in your business is important, right? But it's the question is, what price are you going to pay? My daughters are 7, 9, and 13.
Mhm.
And for me, success is being there for them as a dad, right? And being there for my family, for my wife as well. And just kind of having this high quality of life and being successful at my work and feeling like I'm doing great things and impacting people. That's success.
Yeah, I love that. And what would you say? So, my podcast tagline is Unleashing Greatness Within. What would 3 tips you would give somebody to unleash their inner greatness?
So I think the first thing is to ask yourself what your values are, right? And to ask yourself if you are really living within those values. The second thing is to really understand the power of habit. 50% or more of everything we do is kind of on autopilot, right? So if you're maximizing what you're doing from a habit point of view, getting rid of bad habits, really programming yourself to have good habits. The book Atomic Habits is an amazing one. I think that's a powerful way to do it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. And call to action. So, what would be one thing you would guide everybody who's listening today to do when they hop off this call that they can implement this week, just based on our message today?
Just go ahead and schedule a 15-minute chat with me if this is of interest to you when it comes to franchising. If you're not interested in franchising, right? I'm a big believer that exercise in general is just kind of the best thing to do for your life. I really believe it's the holy grail. So if you're just try and spend even 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes this week exercising.
I love it. So if you're curious about franchising, reach out to Adam, everybody. You definitely know your stuff. Thanks for being on and sharing with us today. I know it's a brief conversation, but I believe enough to create some curiosity for people to ask themselves if owning a franchise would be a great fit, or if they have a franchise and want to expand, to reach out to you and or sell. And yes, I agree with you. Get out there and exercise, everybody. It's definitely a part of a healthy and wealthy lifestyle to adopt. So, Adam, just thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate your expertise and guidance and knowledge.
Thank you, Kelly.
Awesome. Have a good day.
Hi, I'm Tanya, and this is Julie, and we are the founders of Coach Core, your all in one solution for building and scaling a successful coaching business.
At Coach Core, we provide you with everything you need in one place. You can house your courses, manage memberships, run email campaigns, and create stunning websites and funnels, all with our easy to use platform.
And it's not just about the software. We offer built-in coaching and mentorship, helping you implement best practices from certified NLP practitioners and story brand coaches. And that's just scratching the surface of what's inside.
And that's why we're excited to sponsor the Entrepreneurial Elevation podcast with Kelly Beveridge. Kelly is a thought leader who inspires and elevates entrepreneurs worldwide.
We believe in the power of community and continuous learning, and this podcast is a fantastic resource for any coach looking to truly grow their practice.
So join us on this journey. Tune into the Entrepreneurial Elevation podcast for insights and inspiration, and visit Coach Core to transform your coaching business today.
Coach Core, your path to coaching success.